want that.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the Legal and Finance Committee for the City of Rapid City for March 12th, 2014. The first order of business is the roll call and determination of a quorum. Here. Thank you. Next up is the adoption of the agenda. Does anybody have anything they wish to add or delete from the agenda? None appearing. I entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Laurenti, second by Jerry? Yes. Second by Wright. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is the public comment, general public comment. Now is the time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except for placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. First, we have Mr. Rick Kriebel. Sir, if you could please identify yourself, and you have 3 minutes. I'm sure you know the drill. Right there's the podium. We moved it. Well, I don't know. We're all creatures of habit. Thank you, sir.
Right here. Rick Kriebel, Rapid City. A couple meetings ago, I was watching and I saw an official come and make some comments about and answer questions to you guys about property taxes since the budget's coming up and how they can plan, and there were some things that were misunderstood. And a question was asked, I believe, about twice was, does growth affect the rest of the property tax owners in Rapid City? And another comment by the official that spoke was about the mill levy. And I passed out a copy of the law 101335, and it's not really a copy, it's just one that I kind of cut and pasted into Word and kind of broke out a couple of words for you. And I just want you to know that I don't think you got the right information. But anyway, I want you to know that the right answer to does growth affect the taxes on the other taxpayers is not maybe, and it's not sometimes, it's never. And I guess I'll illustrate it for you real quick. If you would understand the Rapid City to be one house, and the taxes on that house were $100, and we all know that the 101335 says, you know, property taxes go up the rate of inflation or 3%, whichever is less. And when you ask someone about that, they say, yeah, I get it, But then when you talk about the application of it, they're totally lost. So, you know, so if the taxes on a house this year are $100 and inflation is 3%, what are the taxes next year? $103, right? How did you know that? 3%, it's easy. Well, you didn't know the assessed value, and you didn't know the mill levy. If those were important, would you have needed to know those? I tell people from time to time, you know, the assessed value and the mill levy is not that important, but some people try to think that it is. Well, let's give it a mill levy and an assessed value. Let's give the house a $100,000 value, and let's give it a mill levy of 1. That's $100, right? Let's go back to zero inflation. If inflation is 0, and if it's $100 this year, it's $100 next year. No change. Here's where everything goes crazy. Let's just say that the assessed value doubles to $200,000. What do the taxes do? Everybody gets quiet. That's right. That's what happens. Guess what? The taxes are $100. They don't go up. Guess what happens when the assessed value goes down to $50,000 from $100? Nothing. Taxes are $100. Guess what the mill levy does? The mill levy, if the assessed value doubles to $200,000, the mill levy will go in half. If the house devalues down to $50,000, it'll double to a mill levy of 2. So, one, you cannot, it's impossible to freeze a mill levy, unlike what you were told. You cannot freeze a mill levy. It's impossible. It's a mathematical impossibility. It does not work. And the assessed value of growth will never affect that one house when there's 0% inflation. Goes from $100 to $100. If another house is built with the same value as that house, guess what the taxes are in that house? $100. Because the law, as you see, as I showed you there, I printed out for you, it says after. After you apply the CPI, after you do that, then you apply the growth. And you apply the same mill levy to the growth.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Up next, we have no more general public comment speakers. Anybody wish to speak on anything that's not currently on the agenda? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to consent items numbers 1 through 14. I do have a speaker request form for number 2 from Mr. Peter Wernicke. If you could please approach the dais, or the podium, sir, and identify yourself. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Pete Wernicke, 4127 Pleasant Drive. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'm about to say is no reflection upon Mark Jobman at all, but I did notice something, especially in light of the last candidate that had applied to sit on Compass, and I just want to bear something out here. I noticed that on the attachments that his application was different than the ones that I myself sat through. There seem to be 2 questions that I think are very, very important that may seem very, very trivial, but they're not. The first one is, why do you want to sit on Compass? Since it's such an important, different committee, it's not in the executive branch, it's the council's committee. The other one is, what can you bring to Compass? What's your qualification, your special ability that would add to the committee? And I noticed that both of those were off the questionnaire. Evidently, the application that was used is just the citizens. What's it called? I can't even remember now. It's just the general application. My question is, and I realize no one right now can answer it, is what happened to the original process? When did this get changed? This committee is an extremely important one, as it sits 3 private citizens. And it's very, very easy for a person to, let's say, hide their political agenda. And again, I'm not casting any aspersions on anybody or any past, present, or even future. But by answering these 2 simple questions, at least it gives the committee that is assigned to select people to appoint to those positions, because remember, they're there for 3 years, and you're not allowed to sit on any other task force or committee in the city. This is a very, very special case. I'm just rising to raise that question. Is there something that has changed? I got to say, I do not know Mark Jobman at all, and I am not casting any aspersions on him. But in light of what happened with the last candidate, I feel it's my duty as someone who has gone through that process and knows what the reasoning for it was, is to what's happened. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I do believe Mr. Wright may be able to answer your question for you.
Pete, I'm going to ask that you contact Colleen Schmidt. She's chairperson of the committee, and the selection process for candidates is overruled by that committee and appointees of that committee. So that's where that process would come from. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Wright, and thank you, Mr. Wernicke. Okay, I have no more speaker request forms for any consent items, numbers 1 through 14. Does anybody wish to speak on any of those items does not currently have a speaker request form in? None appearing, I'm going to close public comment on those items, and I'm going to look at the council to see if they want to remove any items for discussion. Mr. Wright would like to remove items numbers 5 and 10, please, for discussion. Anything, Mr. Laurenti? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve the balance, exclusive of numbers 5 and 10.
So moved. Second.
Flip a coin. Motion by Laurenti, second by Wright. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We now are on to item number 5, which is to approve up to $100,000 in CIP grant funds and $99,818 in in-kind design and construction services as a grant match for funding of South Dakota Department of Transportation Alternatives Program, MACO, is that MACO, excuse me? MACO? MACO Sika Trail and connection to Western Dakota VOTEC, and the chair recognizes Jerry Wright.
I'd like staff to brief us on the situation here with the grant. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. If you please.
The recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks. Identify yourself, Alex, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alex D. Smith, Parks and Recreation Department. I just wanted to give Legal and Finance and City Council an update. We've got some new information back from the TAP program, which is administered through South Dakota DOT. And we met with CIP committee to go over the potential of this project, which we applied for. And the recommendation before you on the agenda today is to approve up to $100,000 in CIP funds, and then the in-kind design and construction services. However, with the new information that we received from the program coordinator at DOT, if that is approved, basically that the project will not be accepted by DOT. So I just wanted to make that point clear that by approving that funding, you're basically saying that that project's not going to proceed, because DOT, they offered us and I probably put this on the screen so everyone can see it. You guys help me out here. Thank you. If I can get that all on here for you guys. And you guys have this in front of you. But basically, the recommendation that CIP made was to approve the $100,000 that was originally applied for and approved through Public Works and City Council on September 10th and September 16th back in 2013. These were the three projects that we did apply for. And then down here, DOT is offering to fund part of one of those projects. There were a lot of other applicants throughout South Dakota. They felt that number two was one that they wanted to put their support in, and however, we asked for close to $400,000 of their support. However, they tried to stretch their dollars as best they could, and they said that we're willing to offer you $207,000 towards that project, which would then increase the city's required funding. And in order for us to proceed with that project, we need to put more money into it. And I have that outlined up here as far as what that new staff recommendation would be for us to proceed with this project. And we need to authorize a total of $293,000 for construction. And then that potential funding allocation is down at the bottom of a potential way to get to that point. And I'll leave it at that for some questions on that.
Thank you, Alex. Does anybody have any questions? Jerry, you still have the floor.
If I remember right, in the discussion of CIP, there was no identified source that other money could come from. Is that correct? I mean, from Public Works or anywhere else?
That is correct. At this point, we haven't looked at identifying any other funding sources other than the grant match funds and CIP.
So we'd have to increase the funding by, I'm looking at this, roughly $130,000 more than we did originally. Is that correct? We have $166,000 and the construction is $292,000. The other, is that design and construction engineering? Is that in-house match?
Let me switch here on you. That gets a little small. I apologize. The top one is the initial proposal that we presented to DOT in the cost breakdown. The total project being roughly under $600,000. Our local match, combined with InDesign costs and construction costs, would have been just under $200,000. And then on the bottom, that's what the new proposal would end up being, is the federal share being $207,000 and our local match coming in at a grand total of just under $400,000. Now, in the top category, design and engineering, that would be in kind. That gets you to about just under $100,000. So we need to come up with $293,000 of total construction costs.
We have 166 allocated right now.
Chair recognizes Pauline Sumption, Finance Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Currently, we have nothing allocated to this project. The only thing that the CIP has recommended to this committee is what's on the agenda, which is $100,000 of cash from the CIP grant matching funds, and then the $93,000 in kind. It was discussed heavily at the CIP committee meeting to fund the $400,000 approximately over various years, and it was not the wishes of that committee to do so. That is why the recommendation is before you the way it is. Something else I just want to bring to light, I know it's not part of your question, I apologize, but I want to make sure that I emphasize this. Even two things, actually. Even though Public Works and Council authorized the use of the CIP matching money, it hadn't been before the committee until last month.
Right.
So the committee had never seen that before. I also know that Patsy Horton in Community Planning has put in grant applications, and I know at the time her intent was to also utilize these funds. And so if you approve an additional $100,000 from them in 2014, that wipes out all but $2,000 left in that line item. And if those other projects are granted money from the state, then you're going to have to struggle finding those monies as well. But the discussion at CIP was that we didn't think that the match was appropriate for this size, where it ended up being they were 30% and the city was 60 to 70% of the project. And again, this is back to where we're at with it.
Okay.
Alex, did you have something you'd like to add, sir? Sorry, Jerry. Okay.
I guess I can't put words in Patsy's mouth, but these three projects were the ones that were sought after and presented to council for us to proceed to try to gain funding. Obviously, you see the three there. The two of them did not make the cut. DOT doesn't want to fund any portion of those at any time. This was the cream that rose to the top, and in order to proceed, we need to make some type of, I will say, motion to the point of, if we're going to proceed with this project or we don't want to proceed with this project at this time, basically.
So I got another question, and I apologize, the 166,358, I read as this was the amount of money that CIP approved for the grant match in September of 2013, is that correct?
That is not correct. That is the dollar amount that Public Works and City Council basically authorized us to show on the grant applications.
Oh.
So as Pauline said those funds were not vetted through CIP to approve it. That's why today on the agenda you had the approval of that $100,000. But when we brought that to CIP, we didn't know. We were basically looking at a who blinks first kind of situation. DOT typically doesn't blink, so they got back to us and said, well, the other community that we partially funded is moving forward, and if you don't fund the entire project for this one, we're going to recommend to not move forward with it.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, then you took it to mean that go ahead and fill in the blanks saying we're going to do it, but there really wasn't a commitment, is that correct? By the CIP or somebody? Not by the CIP? But it says here the city council did, so is that not correct?
Pauline Sumption, if you could please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I read this correctly, and I apologize, I didn't realize that these were three different grants broken out. At the time, basically, the council approved that almost $100,000, and that is the recommendation from the CIP committee, is that $100,000, where there it's $99,094. That was in the grant application. So basically, CIP has concurred with that $100,000 matching amount. I can't speak for the CIP committee, and maybe Alex can help us out. When do you have to have an answer on this? Is it possible to take it back through CIP on the 21st of March for the next round of meetings?
It's really not. That's kind of why we brought it to light at this point. Basically, DOT has us on their STIP program, and they're making the determination that next week, basically, we have to let them know by by Tuesday after city council if we're going to move forward with this or not. I mean, that's,
So in essence, we don't have the funding to meet the match, correct? I make a motion that we rescind the offer.
Motion by Wright to deny.
Rescind the offer of the
Well,
grant, or however you want to word it.
correct term would be deny the motion, the item, is that correct, Wade? I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Try again, let us know.
Yeah, deny the funding, okay. And second by Laurenti. Any further discussion, Steve Laurenti? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Jerry? Mm-hmm.
I just wanted
No, we're taking a vote.
to, oh,
Yeah, all in favor, say aye.
aye, I'm sorry.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, moving on to item number 10. Is to authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign a 5-year promissory note with Pioneer Bank and Trust for $1,680,170 at a 3% interest rate to finance the Tyler Technology Software and Barry Dunn Consultant contracts associated documents. And I recognize Jerry Wright.
For clarification, I understand that this is a 5-year contract and the budget currently is covering the first year, is that correct? And we'll be budgeting it in out years?
Correct. The current budget can cover the first year's payments.
And this is the new IFIS or new accounting software that we're after?
The new financial software package, yes.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Wright, second by Laurenti to approve. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we're now on to non-consent items. We have items numbers 15 through 18. I'm now going to open public comment on item number 15 through 18. I have one speaker request form, from Terry Haverly on item number 17. If you could step to the podium, ma'am, please identify yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Terry Haverly, the Vice President of Rapid City Economic Development. And as stated in the letter that you've all received from Ben Snow, our request is to move the $1 million in the IDPF fund that's currently allocated from the last Vision Fund request cycle and place that into the Opportunity Capture Fund. The intent has been and will continue to be to drive jobs and capital investment. This move improves the efficiency, having the money all together. Both funds already utilize the same city-appointed committee, which has discussed this and agrees. Jim Meyerhouse is here representing that committee. There's no loss of money. It would continue for economic development purposes. So our request is that the Legal and Finance Committee send this to the full council.
Thank you, ma'am. Are you requesting that we send it to full council without recommendation, or just
No,
with
with-
approval? Okay,
with-
approval, I assume, just making sure.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any speaker requests for items number 15 through 18? I have no speaker request forms. Anybody wish to speak on those items? None appearing, I'm going to close public comment and move on to item number 15, which is from Ryan Purdy, a request for reimbursement for personal property abated on 1918 5th Street. He's not here, okay. Would it be appropriate to continue this item, or? Motion by Wright, second by Laurenti to deny number 15. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 16, authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign amended developers agreement for President's Plaza. The chair recognizes Jerry Wright.
Make a motion to move this to Monday night's meeting without recommendation.
Motion by Wright, second by Laurenti to move to council without recommendation. Any further discussion? None appearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 17, request to dissolve IDPF program, Infrastructure Development Partnership Fund, and reallocate the funds to the Opportunity Capture Fund.
So move.
Motion approved by Wright, second by Laurenti. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 18, second reading and recommendation of ordinance 5973 and amending provisions concerning garbage and refuse collection in newly annexed areas by amending section 8.08.030 of the Rapid City Municipal Code.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Laurenti to approve, second by Wright. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.